Lospinuso. I hope everyone had a very, very Merry Christmas yesterday. I got some stuff too. I hope you got some stuff for the rest of your family as well. And, I watched the three football games as well as the basketball games like everyone else. And, the first game, it was back and forth. Third game, of course, comeback win from the Buccaneers. But the second game was really telling to me because this is the one game that everyone said throughout the season got worse and worse as the season went on as a matchup. Because going into this game before the season began, Russell Wilson with his new team, the Denver Broncos, who in theory would be in the mix for the division for the AFC West. Nathaniel Hackett, brand new coach. And you look at the other side, the Los Angeles Rams, Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp. They just won the Super Bowl. Bobby Wagner's on the team, will be against his old teammate, Russell Wilson. So this game had a lot of eyeballs on it as time has gone on. But as the season went along, it got worse and worse. The Rams are going to finish as one of the very worst teams ever win the Super Bowl, one of the worst sequels in league history for a defending Super Bowl champion. The Broncos are in an even worse situation because they spent all this money on Russell Wilson after they traded the farm to get him, along with 2 first-rounders, which with the Seahawks. If the season were to end today, the Broncos would have the 3rd pick, but they don't have that because the Seahawks now have it. And if things go their way, they could end up with the number 1 overall pick. That would also go to the Seahawks as well. A Seahawks team that, mind you, with Geno Smith, is a Pro Bowl caliber player now. He made his first ever Pro Bowl in his career. And the Seahawks are in striking distance to potentially make the playoffs. 1 year after missing it with Russell Wilson as their quarterback, they could potentially make it with Geno Smith as their quarterback now. And yeah, the Seahawks are not a great team. They're a very okay team. They might have a 9-8 record when it's all said and done. They might not make the playoffs. But the fact that they have a winning record is surprising. And that goes for the coaching of Pete Carroll. Now, why am I bringing Pete Carroll into this? Well, because I think a lot of people didn't give Pete Carroll enough credit in Seattle. I think a lot of people know, especially with how bad Russell Wilson has been this year, that maybe he was the issue in Seattle after all. Maybe, his antics and how he was with the media, that Richard Sherman had a falling out with him. He said how much of an issue he was with the team. They were distant from him. And you can even see inside that locker room. They're not connecting with Russell Wilson. They think he's too much for them. They think his ego is too above everyone else. And I don't want to really make those assessments at Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson has been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL the last decade. He has a passer rating of over 100 for his career. Him and Aaron Rodgers, arguably the NFC's closest version to getting a Peyton Manning, Tom Brady style rivalry, 2 great organizations battling out every single year for a potential Super Bowl berth. Of course, for a lot of the 2010s, they'd fail to do so, but they would still always be in playoff contention and potentially win their division. Now you look at it this year. How is it going? Packers might make the playoffs. Seahawks might make the playoffs, again, even in spite of the issues of their quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers didn't look good at the first start of the season, and now he is. And now you look at the Broncos with Nathaniel Hackett, the OC from the Green Bay Packers, the OC who was a part of that coaching staff that won 13 games in the last 3 years in a row, had the first-round bye for 3 consecutive seasons, made 2 NFC Championship games. Of course, they didn't win either of them. And Aaron Rodgers winning MVP the last 2 seasons with over 100 touchdowns in less than 15 interceptions in total. That's just insane to even comprehend. And now he's with the Broncos, and they won the worst offenses in league history since the turn of the century. In fact, over the last 10 years, the Broncos have had more games where they scored under 17 points, the most of any team in the last 10 years. The Cleveland Browns of 2017, they went 0-16, as well as the 2016 Cleveland Browns that went 1-15 with their only win being against the Chargers. They had more games They had a better offensive rating than the Broncos this year, and they have one more than either of those teams. And guess what? There's 2 more games left of the NFL season, and they already surpassed them. That's how bad they are. If their Broncos defense has been elite this year. It's a Super Bowl caliber defense. If they had an offense that scored like 17 or more points, they would be in the playoff hunt. They'd be around a wild card spot. But instead, because their offense is so atrocious, they are in contention with the #1 overall pick. That's not even going to go to them because the Russell Wilson trade. When you look at how bad Russell Wilson's been this year, like he had the largest drop off in passer rating by a quarterback in his first year with a team in league history. The only ones that are comparable are Alex Smith with the Redskins in 2018. And then you also had Matt Castle in his first year with the Chiefs in 2009. But even then, this after Smith got hurt, the Redskins, and I'm going to call them the Redskins because they were called that back then, they were doing well and they were in the playoff contention. But, with him being out, they missed their chance. And for the Chiefs, they won the division the following year. So maybe there is still hope for Russell Wilson. But, man, he has looked awful this year. His passer rating has been awful. His completion percentage is like around 60, might even be below that. He had 3 terrible interceptions yesterday. He's been overthrowing guys, underthrowing guys. His receivers aren't even open. His offensive line isn't that good either. He's not mobile anymore. His accuracy is a mess, just atrocious. Now, to be fair, he's been throwing some interceptions, not as much as some other guys, but he still has been high on the interception count this year. And for a guy that has been always great with handling the ball and finding a way to get it done when it matters most, it's been the opposite this year. Russell Wilson has been the least valuable player of the NFL for this entire season because of how bad he's been. That offense starts with him, and he's the main culprit as to why that offense is bad. Hell, Brett Rippon went 1-1 as the Broncos starter, and in his second start for the season against the Cardinals, they scored 24 points. Meanwhile, yesterday, the Broncos offense could only muster up 14, and those last 8 points were in garbage time. And to make matters worse, Rippon came in at the very end, and he threw a pick 6 to Kobe Durant. Yeah, Kobe Durant. That sounds like a very stereotypical NBA name, but it's just, my God. And, of course, you're going to look at Nathaniel Hackett. Nathaniel Hackett gave up play calling. I mean, he's in over his head. He's basically like Freddie Kitchens if he was a bit slimmer. Remember Freddie Kitchens when he was with the Browns that one year in 2019 where they were expected to make the playoffs, but instead they finished 6-10, 7-9. But even that team was better because at least they fired Freddie Kitchens until the season was over. Hackett they fired two games to go of this season. The only other 3 head coaches that were fired, forgot the name of my head, one from the 1940s. McCauley, I think his name was, from 1978 with the 49ers. Urban Meyer last year, and Nathaniel Hackett this year. That's 4. Now, we've been saying, what about Bobby Petrino? Well, he resigned with a few games to go in 2007. So I probably wouldn't count him. But Nathaniel Hackett, what a disaster. People are not going to look at him as one of the worst coaches in NFL history just because of how bad that offense was. And it also makes those MVP seasons with Aaron Rodgers that much more impressive, considering Nathaniel Hackett was on the coaching staff for all those games. And I'm more than convinced at this point that a big reason why Nathaniel Hackett was hired by the Broncos was to try and lure Aaron Rodgers to get traded to the Broncos. And, of course, it didn't happen. Instead, he got that contract extension by Green Bay. Instead, they go out and get Russell Wilson, which mortgages their future. They gave him that big contract extension, and they don't have an out from that contract until 2026. And he's under the books until Wilson will be 41 years old. He's already 34. He's already 34 years old. He would not become an unrestricted free agent unless you cut him until 2028, 2029. So it's a very, very long way away. And if Russ is bad next year too, what are you going to do? Could you potentially deal him this year? And if that's the case, how much are teams going to want to give up for a quarterback who's on the wrong side of 30, had the worst season of his career, led an historically bad offense? What are the Broncos going to do? And they don't have a first-round pick for the next few years because of that Russell Wilson trade. So you're going to need someone who's going to come in and try to right the ship for them. I see a lot of people saying that Dan Quinn could potentially come in, and I think he'd be a really nice choice. You know, former head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, got the team to the Super Bowl. Obviously, we know how that ended. He was also defensive coordinator for the Seahawks for years during the Legion of Boom days. Maybe Brian Schottenheimer can come and be their OC, make someone familiar with Russ's traits. But you know, if he's bad again next year, what are you going to do if you're the Broncos? He's still under contract. You don't have an out from his contract until like what, 2026. So what would you do if you're him? And Russell Wilson, one of the most respected players in the NFL, has been one of the most mocked. Everyone is now saying "let's ride" as a pejorative for how bad he's been this year, how bad the Broncos have been this year, and it's a real stand on his legacy. This is almost going to be like how Don McNabb was seen when he joined the Redskins and the Vikings at the end of his career, where he looked god awful, and that was coming off a year where the Eagles won the NFC Championship game. And I still think Russell Wilson is still a great quarterback. Historically, he's a very accurate quarterback, but oh man, this is going to do wonders for him because Seahawks fans are not going to be very positive about how he left the team. His teammates are now throwing shade at him. Like when he fell down, none of the players on his team picked him up. The guy that picked him up ended up being the official. So that tells you how other players think of him now. He's not respected anymore. So he's going to he has to do a lot to really rectify his image. But don't worry for him. He's already made millions upon millions of dollars. He's appeared in God knows how many commercials. He's married to Ciara. He has 2 beautiful children. He's made more money than you and I could ever imagine. So don't worry. He's already set, and I still think he's a Hall of Famer. Yes, his time in Denver has been awful, but we also should not just use that to just deflect from the amazing 9 years he had in Seattle because what was it, 9, 10 years? Because he truly was spectacular. He was one of the biggest shows in the NFL during his time in Seattle. The "Let Russ Cook" meme, that's because of how good he was in Seattle. He would say, "Let Russ cook. Let him have fun" with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and Doug Baldwin and Jermaine Kearse and all these other guys, Golden Tate as well. So what he needs to do is see if he can try to just get his game a bit better, and hopefully next year for him, he does better. But if I'm the Broncos, I would potentially considering shutting down Russell Wilson for the rest of the season. I mean, you're not playing for anything at this point. Wilson has not been good. He was out for a couple injuries this year, twice already. I would say to avoid future risk for you and your contract and your team, I would sit him down and put him on IR for the rest of the season and start Brett Rippon. That's what I would do. I don't know if they're going to do that, but it's what I would personally do. And a lot of people are also asking, who's worse, Nathaniel Hackett or Urban Meyer? I would say Urban Meyer, because at least with Nathaniel Hackett, the issues have just been on the football side of it. Urban Meyer was bad as a leader. He was insulting his assistants. He was insulting his players. He assaulted players. He also degraded them. Nathaniel Hackett, from my understanding, did not do any of it. I think he was just on over his head. But I do hope he gets back on his feet. Maybe it's a quarterback coach. Maybe he's an OC. Maybe he can go back to Green Bay. Whatever happens, I do wish him the best for his future endeavors. And for the Broncos, I guess better luck next year. And you're not really playing for anything at this point, so I guess you only live once. But I don't expect him to win their next 2 games, so you might as well put a stick of fork in it. But that's my thoughts, guys. What do you have to say? And let me know in the comments below. How bad would you say the Broncos season has been? For in my opinion, I think them and the Colts are one of the worst teams in the NFL, and I believe that their defense is still amazing, but they need help on offense, and they need a right head coach to really steer the ship. But anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.